Funding for this CyberWire podcast is made possible in part by LastPass. LastPass is an award-winning security solution that helps millions of individuals in over 70,000 organizations navigate their online lives easily and securely. Businesses can maximize productivity while still maintaining effortless, strong security with LastPass. LastPass can minimize risk and give your IT team a breakthrough integrated single sign-on, password management, and multi-factor authentication solution. Phone spearphishing is catching on after the Twitter hack. Taiwan blames China for hacking government agencies. Fritz Frog botnet is crypto mining for now. Whoever's behind Golden Spy is trying to cover their tracks. Wasted Locker ransomware is successful without stealing data. The U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence releases its final report on Russian interference with the 2016 election. Joe Kerrigan looks at shady SIM cards. Our guest is Nathan Jones from White Canyon Software on secure data destruction. And an AI company exposes millions of medical records. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Wednesday, August 19th, 2020. The phone-based phishing caper that enabled takeover of more than 100 high-profile Twitter accounts is apparently serving as a template for other attacks. Wired reports that a growing number of organizations are experiencing similar copycat approaches with varying but disturbing degrees of success. ZeroFox sees the uptick in phishing attacks affecting not only corporations, but social media influencers as well. Like the Twitter hack, these attacks seem to be launched by young English-speaking troublemakers organizing on Discord and shady forums. But ZeroFox says their techniques are so effective that organizations should prepare to see these tactics deployed by more sophisticated criminals and state-sponsored groups. Voice phishing, also called vishing, isn't new, but in the past it's primarily been used against mobile carriers in SIM-swapping attacks. This recent wave of vishing attacks is more wide-ranging and often involves convincing a victim to enter their credentials on a spoofed login page. ZeroFox recommends a mix of training, policy, and technical defenses. Quote, training and education, monitoring and preemptive blocking of problem domains, SSO auditing, and employing role-based access best practices for internal panels. End quote. Authorities in Taiwan have blamed two Chinese government hacking groups, Black Tech and Taidor, for cyber attacks against at least 10 Taiwanese government agencies, Reuters reports. The Taiwan Investigation Bureau's Cybersecurity Investigation Office said the actors had access around 6,000 government email accounts in campaigns that started as early as 2018. Reuters says the victims included at least 4 Taiwan tech companies that had been providing information services to the government. Guardicore has found a peer-to-peer Linux botnet, Fritz Frog, which it describes as sophisticated, fileless, evasive, proprietary, and aggressive. It has attempted to brute force tens of millions of IP addresses using an extensive dictionary and has succeeded in breaching over 500 SSH servers, including those of known higher education institutions in the US and Europe and a railway company. The Fritz Frog malware operates completely in memory and doesn't attempt to survive reboots, but it leaves a public SSH key as a backdoor, enabling the attackers to return at their leisure. The malware could potentially be used to deliver a range of payloads, but so far seems to have, for the most part, been engaged in cryptojacking systems to mine Monero. The botnet seems to be unique, which is why the researchers call its code proprietary, although it bears some minor similarities with another P2P botnet known as Rakos. TrustWave's Spider Labs reports finding 5 versions of an uninstaller for the Golden Spy backdoor carried by tax software whose use is required of companies doing business in China. The uninstaller was dropped by an update module to erase Golden Spy before deleting itself. TrustWave believes the uninstallers were deployed by those behind the Golden Spy backdoor to cover their traces. The actors issued modified versions of the uninstallers, which Trustwave says were specifically designed to evade our Yara rules we published. The researchers conclude that their findings, quote, should serve as a wake-up call for organizations because it proves any actions, including implanting and extracting malware, can be taken covertly and at the will of the attacker with the help of the updater module without impacting the functionality of the Golden Tax software, end quote. Researchers at Menlo Security warn of an ongoing attack campaign dubbed Duri that's using HTML smuggling and JavaScript blobs, or binary large objects, to download malware onto devices. The malware itself isn't new, but it was previously delivered via Dropbox download links. The attackers have switched to other cloud hosting providers and added the HTML smuggling technique to evade detection. Securonics released a report on the Wasted Locker ransomware attributed to the Evil Corp cybercriminal group. The researchers say the ransomware's operators have been effective at extracting multi-million-dollar ransoms in targeted attacks. The ransomware has hit more than 31 organizations, 8 of which were Fortune 500 companies. The researchers also confirmed that Wasted Locker's operators don't appear to exfiltrate data for the purpose of extortion, although they could easily add this capability in future attacks. The U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence has released the final volume of its report on Russian interference with the 2016 election. It found that President Putin directed the campaign and set its goals, generally disruptive but specifically anti-Clinton, and that despite troubling behavior by sometime Trump consigliere Paul Manafort, there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russian intelligence services, and that the FBI made loose and careless use of the retrospectively implausible Steele dossier. Democrats emphasize Manafort's counterintelligence problems. Republicans point out that the FBI didn't exactly cover itself with glory in the investigation. Secure Thoughts reports that artificial intelligence company Sense AI exposed 2.5 million medical records and PII, including names, insurance records, medical diagnosis notes, and much more. The data were left in 2 folders stored at the same IP address as Sense's website. The information appears to be related to individuals who had been in car accidents and received neck or spinal injuries. The databases were secured on July 8th after Sense was notified by a security researcher, but the company hasn't yet commented on or disclosed the matter. And finally, the New York Times reports that President Trump said Monday he would pardon a very, very important person on Tuesday. Who it was going to be, he refused to tell, but he did explicitly say that it wouldn't be Edward Snowden. It turns out it was Susan B. Anthony. Mr. Snowden and others will have to wait their turn. It's time to take a moment to tell you about our sponsor, Recorded Future. If you haven't already done so, take a look at Recorded Future's Cyber Daily. We look at it. The CyberWire staff subscribes and consults it daily. The web is rich with indicators and warnings, but it's nearly impossible to collect them by eyeballing the internet yourself, no matter how many analysts you might have on staff, and we're betting that however many you haven't got enough. Recorded Future does the hard work for you by automatically collecting and organizing the entire web to identify new vulnerabilities and emerging threat indicators. Sign up for the Cyber Daily email to get the top trending technical indicators crossing the web. Cyber news, targeted industries, threat actors, exploited vulnerabilities, malware, and suspicious IP addresses. Subscribe today and stay ahead of the cyber attacks. Go to recordedfuture.com/cyberwire to subscribe for free threat intelligence updates from Recorded Future. And we thank Recorded Future for sponsoring our show. We routinely discuss the many ways organizations go to great lengths to protect their data, using everything from encryption to multiple off-site backups. But what if you need to destroy data, to delete it and make sure it's gone for good? For more on that, we turn to Nathan Jones from White Canyon Software for his insights on secure data destruction.
So if you go back into the 70s, 80s, and 90s, almost every use case was for physical destruction. Whenever you were getting rid of your old laptops, desktop servers, you would just physically destroy those drives. And we found that was being obviously quite wasteful and unnecessary in a lot of cases. So it really came about because we were looking for a better solution than just destroying everything and everything ending up in a landfill.
So take us through some of the reasons why securely wiping a drive is better than physically destroying it.
It has a lot to do with the audit report that's generated as part of the process. So a lot of what you're having to do is to prove that the data is secure. And part of what the software does is it creates an audit report that says this drive with this unique identifier was wiped to this spec. It started at this time and ended at this time. And then it was performed by this technician. It was done in this location. So that report gives you the context of everything that was done to that drive, when, where, how, all the important information about that. And that's required for meeting standards like HIPAA and NATO and GDPR, where you're trying to meet the requirements that are on you from a regulatory standpoint. So that report is actually quite impossible to do with a physical destruction. So part of the erasure solution is that we're doing this via a secure application where we're going through and we're capturing all this information. We're encrypting the audit reports, so it's impossible to spoof these reports. So just from a compliance standpoint, it's a far superior solution.
What about just the notion of not having so much waste end up in the landfills?
Absolutely, but you got to make sure you've checked the boxes on the security side and on the compliance side. But then that's the most compelling reason after the security side is that these devices that have been working in a data center for a couple of years, they could have a second and a third life. And realistically, a lot of these drives, 90% of them plus are still in great shape. They don't have any remapped sectors. They still have 90% of their life left. So these drives that are coming from these giant data centers could then have a second life in more of a mid-range system where these companies aren't wanting to pay top dollar for the top of the line equipment, but these could be repurposed or reused. And when we're talking about laptops and desktops, hey, they could be going to schools or libraries.
That's Nathan Jones from White Canyon Software. And now, a word from our sponsor, KnowBe4. Email is still the #1 attack vector the bad guys use, with a whopping 91% of cyber attacks beginning with phishing. But email hacking is much more than phishing and launching malware. Find out how to protect your organization in an on-demand webinar by Roger A. Grimes, KnowBe4's data-driven defense evangelist. Roger walks you through 10 incredible ways you can be hacked by email and how to stop the bad guys. And he also shares a hacking demo by KnowBe4's Chief Hacking Officer, Kevin Mitnick. So check out the 10 incredible ways where you'll learn how silent malware launch, remote password hash capture, and rogue rules work, why rogue documents, establishing fake relationships, and compromising a user's ethics are so effective, details behind clickjacking and web beacons, and how to defend against all of these. Go to knowbe4.com/10ways and watch the webinar. That's knowbe4.com/1 and 0 WAYS. And we thank KnowBe4 for sponsoring our show. And joining me once again is Joe Kerrigan. He's from the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute, also my co-host over on the Hacking Humans podcast. Joe, great to have you back.
Hi, Dave.
Interesting article from Vice, another one from Joseph Cox. This one is titled, "The Secret SIMs Used by Criminals to Spoof Any Number." Yep. What's going on here, Joe?
So there are these providers of SIMs out there, SIM being the network card that you put into your phone. And these are being called Russian SIMs or encrypted SIMs or white SIMs. And some of the features of this SIM allow you to change the phone number that you're calling from. So when you make a call, you have caller ID information that gets sent along. And it looks like that information can be changed on these SIMs so that when you make the call, you're essentially spoofing a different phone number you're calling from.
And so the way these SIMs are working is that the providers are basically buying up access in bulk to other people's networks?
Right. That's how a lot of these SIMs work. Like Google Fi works this way as well. And the article says that these are called Mobile Virtual Network Operator. And they have a really great acronym here, the MVNO. All these cell phone terms boggle my mind, Dave. But essentially what it is you're piggybacking off the existing infrastructure of another provider, like T-Mobile or AT&T or Verizon. And you're striking an agreement with them. And there are a lot of different companies that do this, and they all do them. Like I think TracFone does this as well. In fact, I know TracFone does this, and Mint Mobile does this. A lot of prepaid companies do this, and they make money by essentially reselling the existing network's phone services for a premium. If it's a prepaid card, it's something that you're maybe you can't go out and get a regular phone contract, so you have to get a prepaid phone. There's a cost associated with that as well. Google Fi actually is fairly inexpensive. You can get that service starting at around $20 a month. Plus, they charge you for data. But if you don't use data, you can get pretty good phone service for around $20 a month. But what these people are claiming is that their system is built on top of these other systems, but it's more secure. And the information is encrypted, and they let you spoof phone numbers. And the SIMs also have the capability of augmenting your voice, so you can disguise your voice. Which is
that's interesting to me. I would not have guessed that capability was possible built into a SIM. I'm not sure what's behind that, but that's an interesting tidbit for sure. I guess the point here is, or the danger is that, for example, if I buy one of these and I spoof my phone numbers being from, say, a bank, a local bank, or any major service provider. So if I called you up and you looked at your phone and it said, "Oh, it's my M&T Bank is calling me," or Verizon's calling me.
Right.
That's a great first step into some sort of social engineering issue.
Absolutely, it's a great way to break that first barrier of getting the phone call answered. Right. What's interesting is that, at least in the U.S., this kind of works when people spoof phone numbers. The caller ID system looks up the phone number and then displays the actual company that is calling you. Right. So we hear about this, and we talk about this over on Hacking Humans. Somebody is calling, purporting to be from like Verizon. I think you even had this happen with your father, right? Somebody was spoofing Verizon's phone number, and it came up as they were Verizon on the phone call. So just spoofing the number is enough to fool the caller ID system. There's probably some technical solution there that needs to be implemented, right? That's got to be verified. It's a great way to, like I said, break that first barrier of getting the phone call answered. These things are not cheap. This Vice article has a picture of costs in here. To get a prepaid card that works worldwide for 1 week and functions for 1 week, $150. But if you want one that works for 6 months, that's only $250. But even that's kind of expensive, I think. But towards the end of the article, they talk about how these things are being used to evade law enforcement, but they're not entirely effective. You still have to connect to a network, and you still have to make phone calls, and you still might be connecting to a Stingray device, even though you might not be making your call over that device. It says you may actually give away your location on it. They quote somebody in here who says you cannot be invisible on the mobile network. That's just not possible. And they also make a point that it's really hard to protect yourself against a government that's very upset with you. It's the way they put it in here.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like, I guess, one of the attractive things to folks who may not be up to good things is the sort of don't ask, don't tell kind of way that they're selling these. They don't really require any information from you. You can buy one of these pretty much anonymously, plug it into your phone, and you're in business.
Right, exactly. And that's one of the things that all these websites are saying is that, just send us a Bitcoin, we'll send you the device. In fact, in this article, they sent $100 in Bitcoin to somebody, and they got that SIM card the next day.
That's service.
Yeah, that's service, exactly.
Right. All right. Well, again, it's over on Motherboard, written by Joseph Cox. The title is The Secret SIMs Used by Criminals to Spoof Any Number. Joe Kerrigan, thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Dave.
Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible, especially our supporting sponsor, Proofpoint's Observit, the leading people-centric insider threat management solution. Learn more at observit.com. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. And for professionals and cybersecurity leaders who want to stay abreast of this rapidly evolving field, sign up for CyberWire Pro. It'll save you time and keep you informed. Listen for us on your Alexa smart speaker, too. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Elliot Peltzman, Peru Prakash, Stefan Vaziri, Kelsey Bond, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.